Hello, I'm Rick Steiner. Welcome to Lux Life Discovered. My guest today is Joshua Yurkowski with Angel Force Foundation. So, Joshua, thanks for joining us today.
Rick, I appreciate you, and this opportunity is amazing. I
Well,
cannot, I'm not excited. Oh, I am excited. It's insane
well,
to be here. I
great.
love it.
So, kind of give us a background on, first of all, you're a vet. So, that kind of started this whole Angel Force Foundation, correct?
Yeah, kind of in a nutshell. With me being a veteran after 21 years, it really pivoted my sense of purpose from retirement into the civilian sector that we're trying to get into after we're done with the lovely service time. But Angel Force Protection um, originally started, almost on a passion-driven, uh, bad case scenario type situation. So not so much the military. I just use my military experience for that. Uh-oh.
Yeah, something. But okay, so you use your military service to connect to what you're doing now. Go ahead with that part again.
Yeah, sure. So we basically it's difficult for veterans to transition. Everybody knows that. It's a whole different world if you're not used to it. And you start at 18, 19 years old in the military, you do 20, 2 decades plus, and then you get out and you have no idea how to do anything. Really. I'm not gonna even sugarcoat it. Full transparency. I didn't know
Right.
anything about my medical, dental, none of that stuff. So um, fortunately and unfortunately, it's a double-edged sword on this one, but Angel Force Protection started when I was still active duty. And what happened was is there was a bum, we'll just say it as simple as that. A bum tried to, was breaking in or trying to get into the school that my kids go to. And it's a private Christian school and shared by a church. And the long story short, it didn't work out very well for myself personally because after that after that individual left, the cops were called and it took a long time for them to show up. And so that next day, I started my LLC for Angel Force Protection. So that's how that started.
Well, that's interesting because you took the initiative and jumped right on that, whereas letting something like that you wanted to do but didn't follow up with it right away, because sometimes you never know how that time span can be so important. And
Yeah.
so you were lucky that the guy didn't get into the school.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was sitting right there in the car and he was trying to get in and the door was locked, so he left, but the principal had thought that he had gotten in the back of my car, so that's why she had called the cops. Well, 45 minutes later, a police officer shows up and
Wow.
it was a misunderstanding, but the next day it just didn't sit well with me that night. So the next day I went in and I talked to the principal, said, "Hey, I'm about to retire from the military. If you don't mind, can I please sit in the school and protect you and my kids and these other kids while, you know, I'm going to be retired. So what else are you going to do?" So she said, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, how come there's no protection anyways?" And she said we couldn't afford it. And so that really got to me. I wasn't allowing that to deter. I mean, you don't put a cost on a kid's head, right? Um, so I started the LLC, and then we ended up contracting with that same school for our very first one. I call it the very first brick to the rampart. But you don't put money in between the protection of children, right? And so while I was still active duty, I created these organizations, and then when I retired, it gave me that opportunity to just spread my wings and do this.
So your first one was in Crestview. Is that where it was? Is
Yeah,
that right?
so the first that's right. So yeah, the first contract was in Crestview. Um, I was having a lot of difficulties when I first started, bureaucracy and red tape and lots of politics, involved and some other things, and so I was getting a lot of pushback with my LLC. to as far as protecting the kids. I needed some seed capital, a little bit of help and love on that side, and no one was willing to help. And because ethical reasons, we can't support an LLC and all this stuff. So in July, so 3 months after I started my LLC, I started a nonprofit, and that's this one here, Angel Force Foundation, and that is was built because I was tired of listening to people say we
Why
can't
they,
support your private organization. So,
were you surprised by that?
oh my gosh, was I? Matter of fact, I had some slander done on my name. There was individuals that were thinking I was chasing ambulances and using these horrific school shootings as an an opportunity for me to get gain
Wow.
success and business. And yeah, I had no intentions of any of that. I wanted to protect my own kids in my own school. And then when I created the program and I mapped out our business plan and then held a standard, it just became it just blew up like wildfire. And now, everybody wants an angel guard in their school.
Well, I mean, it just makes sense. Where we lived, we used to live in Jonesboro, Arkansas, and West Side is, just a few miles um, from Jonesboro, where the first school shooting happened.
hmm
The young elementary kids, and then
hmm
we live in Murray, Kentucky now. Heath is an hour away at the most, and then
hmm
that shooting happened. So if you've never lived around a town where the shooting has happened,
hmm
it's easy to, I guess, not understand what goes on. But here we are years later, and you know, the some of these children that survived that shooting just
hmm
still living with that nightmare and the just the physical part of it as well as the mental. It's unreal. And
It is. It
so
is.
yeah, and it's hard to imagine someone not wanting their child protected. That just blows my mind. Yeah,
Well, so, and that's the thing, like a lot of the times we call it the chaos to clarity thing, and I'm working on it right now, but people are always under the impression that, and or optimistically speaking, they're under the impression that it's just not going to happen to them, right? Like, well, no,
yeah,
I'm not gonna think about that happening because you don't want to manifest that anyways or whatever. But the reality is it absolutely can happen.
yeah.
It can happen right now as we're speaking, and that's what we're going and building into our Angel Force protection side to be proactive and prevent that from ever happening, or just the idea of it even existing in the first place, you
Yeah.
know?
So now, how many schools are you in now? Because we talked briefly at an event recently, and you were talking about how you're expanding. So, kind of give a overview of where you are now and what's in the works, what's being planned.
Sure. Sure. So, just keep in mind, I started this while I was active duty in April of 24. So it hasn't been quite 2 years yet.
Wow.
But we are already in 4 counties in the area. And we just recently signed a partnership with South Carolina, and we're working now nationally. We're, obviously nationally recognized. And then we have 7 states that are bidding for us to come to them next. So when you say we have highly vetted veterans that are about to come into the schools and protect children, and offset costs, state costs, county costs, city costs, utilizing those professional veterans, it's not a no. So as it expands into these other states, it's just going to keep going and going until we get somebody and everybody, an angel guard in every school, and then we can pull the plug eventually and say we don't need it anymore.
Right, right. Well, that's good. And the way you vet your veterans that go into the schools that are part of this, that's a very lengthy process, I'm sure, too, because you want to make sure you've got the right people in that can, be prepared for whatever situation may arise.
Yeah, that's right. The good thing is I know veterans, right? Because I was one for
Right.
21 years. So what we do in our vetting process is a little aggressive than anyone would do in the civilian sector. And I do that on purpose. I make them sign contracts and W-2s. If they're not willing to do that, then I'm sorry, they're not willing to protect children, right? So then when they do, we check them mentally, physically, and then we put them through a training uh, in conjunction with the school itself that we're going to be getting them into. So we tailor their training, their everything to that school. The cost of that is nothing shy of something amazing, and that's building relationships and continuity and longevity within that school so that they can that my angel guards can build relationships properly. And I'm talk core relationships with the children, with the faculty, with the parents, especially. And then kind of bring that gap that's missing right now between faculty and the parents, to bring them together so that we could get the proper protection and education for the school. So for the children, I should say, sorry.
Right. So what's the main, like, not, or the main question that arises when you approach a school or they approach you? What is their main, like, is there like a core concern that they have that you've noticed, or not a concern, but maybe a question or need that evident?
Yeah, it's money every time.
Okay.
I hate to say that, but the in full transparency, the nitty-gritty, it's always money. How much is it going to cost? And a lot sometimes they say, I can't afford that. And I'm like, well, if I'm a third or a quarter of the price of some of these other organizations out here. So I say, okay, well, you can't afford Angel Force. Um, but that can't be your final answer. So let's see what we can do. And then I start working on ways that they can help themselves afford. Whether I bring Angel Force Foundation, my nonprofit, in, we do some ground funding for them, or whatever the case may be. That funding should not be the final answer, but almost 99% of the time,
Wow.
it's funding. The other 1% is liability. So they always say stuff like, or do you guys have your own liability insurance? Are you guys going to be able to take care of that side of it all? And I say, yes, of course. Obviously, we're an organization that allows that, but um, but again, that should liability of somebody
Right.
who's in charge of these children, that should not be a factor. Their safety is always first. So you could just stacked liability. Let's use yours, let's use mine, let's use whoever's, and we'll make sure that the kids get protected. So between those two, it's always up in the
Interesting.
air.
Yeah, that's interesting. So your Angel Force Foundation, tell us a little bit about that, and then also how you use that to help the schools be able to afford the coverage.
Sure, sure. So a lot of the people were under the impression at first it was like an illegal thing, but let me show you. So this is Angel Force Protection. I highlighted like the wings are a little bit different than like on my hat here, and then you've got if you could see the halo with the two hands and then the shield here.
Right.
Angel Force Protection, or Angel Force, the rampart of our future, and then 3 months afterwards, Larissa and I were down in Orlando. It's Larissa, my wife, and we were talking about how we were getting, shut down so much with being able to get funding and stuff to help us to initiate this. Well, um, the final straw was a politician at one point said, I can't do it because again, it's an ethical thing. And they had rules and policies. And I said, to support an organization that protects children, you can't do that. I said, you know how ridiculous that sounds. You know what I mean? Like, come on. And so Larissa and I, while on vacation, in Orlando, we applied for Angel Force Foundation, our 501(c)(3). And that just allowed us so many more opportunities, because what happened is during the summertime we're not contracted with the schools because the schools are out,
Right.
right? So what do we do in between other than my guys going through more extensive training? What do we do in between? And so that really allowed us to do so much more. Now Angel Force Foundation, we have right now we have four major programs, because just because this is what we want to do. First one is FLA, which is Future Leaders Academy. And so we're partnered right now with some schools, and we go in there and we teach children all the way the ages of 7 to 18, um, and help them become proper leaders at their age. And we have tier levels of age. So they graduate from like 7 to 10. I think it's 11 to 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and then or 16, and then 17 and 18. And I mean, I've already started teaching these classes, and it's unbelievable how these kids just have no idea that they're already leaders. Um, and and uh, and they are. They just don't know they are. And so you tell them that, and then you give them some tools and resources to be able to prove to them for themselves that they are leaders already, and then just watch the magic happen. And so we've been working on that now. We have another program that we do transitional training for veterans, first responders, and educators. And so they go through and they watch a videos and stuff that I've created myself, and then when they graduate, instead of hand them a certificate and saying bye bye, thanks for all you did, whatever, we actually say congratulations, let me get you to somebody to help you get an actual handshake into a new chapter of your life. So actually putting the foot forward and walking the walk, not just talking the talk. Um, and then we have another program. Well, there's two more. One's one we haven't even gone really public with, but I'll tell you guys about it. It's a TMS. We're partnering with TMS Therapy. The whole idea of TMS Therapy, and what we're going to do is we're going to request funding or sponsorship, or things like that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to give grants to people so they can get TMS therapy without having to worry about the cost, insurance cost, or failing at all these different medications. It's gonna give them an opportunity to just roll right into that TMS therapy, which, if you don't know what that is, Google TMS therapy. It's brilliant. Matter of fact, I just did a TikTok video today of me getting the TMS therapy done.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, it's an amazing, non-intrusive success for people with anxiety and stress and depression, and it's FDA approved from ages 15 and up. Um, and then one last thing for Angel Force Foundation is we have a new program coming out, and I cannot give too many details yet. Let's just say, for example, a huge corporation wants to protect children without the liability. We
Okay. You
have
provide that. Yeah.
we are going to be providing that for the first time in the nation. And
Wow.
so yeah, whichever company, I mean, we've already reached out to some huge organizations. They are absolutely in love with it. They can then say we are protecting those children indirectly without the liability. And I'm gonna tell you right now that that's gonna make so much of a big difference for us to get these kids protected, you know?
Right. Well, I know you mentioned you've been to Tallahassee, the state capital here in Florida, to talk to politicians there. You're going to be in Washington soon. Is there any part of you that ever thought, or I know the answer is no, but is there any part of you that thought, man, this is a big, big undertaking? Maybe I shouldn't do it.
Yeah, well, so I think about that every once in a while. It usually happens to me late at night, when I'm laying in bed, and I'm just thinking in my head, like everything kind of washing the good and the bad out of the brain for the for the day. And there's a couple of times where I just think, like, man, like, am I doing the right? Is this good? Is this good? It doesn't take long for me to realize, like, Josh, don't be silly to even
Yeah.
think silly stuff like that. Because when I go into these, the state capitol, or when I'm going to be in DC, this coming Monday, I look into the white of the eyes of these people, that are just humans like any one of us, with really their own agenda, and it fuels me to get them to understand and be just as passionate about what I'm doing, because everyone, I don't care who they are, every one of them has some kind of connection with a child. And I'm not even talking about, there could be some an individual that has no children whatsoever, no nieces, no nephews, no daughters, no none of that stuff, but they're still connected to a child. You know why? Because they were one at one point. So if I can really bring them into a focus for just a moment while I'm talking to them, I out trump any kind of agenda that they ever would have. No matter how brilliant, how toxic, how biased, how mean or angry, it doesn't matter. As soon as I say something like, you know, what are you talking about? That's not important. What's important is protecting the kids. It recalibrates them immediately. So it's really a it's addicting. It's addicting to watch someone cold shoulder you and then the next moment go, you know what? I'm going to support you, you know?
Yeah. Well, you need to cold shoulder some people, so that's good. If that's what it takes, hey, that's what it takes.
Sure. Sure. Yeah. I get cold shouldered a lot. When I started this, it was you're nobody until you're somebody. And I still think that to this day in this world that I live in. You're no one until you're somebody. It's sad because I know who I am. I know, what my purpose is, and I know what we're doing as organizations that's going to change the lives of everyone and many. Um, but when they look at me like I'm nobody, it is, to me, it's like, let's go, dude. Like, I really want you to, like,
Exactly.
try me,
Yeah.
I won't go. I'll be the sword in your side till the end of all time, so.
Oh yeah. There's nothing for me like you were talking about to be underestimated. I mean, once you do that, then it's game on. So
That's right.
yeah.
That's right.
So we've got a few minutes left. Talk about your gala. You had one recently. It was your second annual. So kind of give us a little brief history on your first one, then your second, and what you want to see in the future.
Sure. Yeah. So the first two events we had were last year. It was we do a palooza every year, and we do a winter ball every year. The palooza is a little bit more fun for the kids outside during the day, live music, things like that. The winter ball is very, very bougie, very up. I was wearing a bow tie, and it's all sparkly dresses, and I mean it's a ball, right? And so we do the winter ball, and last year it was Heroes on the home front. This year it was Heroes on the waterfront because we did it at the Alice in Destin, right there off of Crab Island, and I could not have been so pleased. Again, like we this would be just our second one that we've done, and I work really hard to make sure that when people come they just enjoy themselves versus feeling like they have obligations to support or do anything like that. Like, I want them to genuinely want to be there and enjoy themselves while they are there. But it was an amazing event. The venue was beautiful. I had so many in-kind help and sponsorships that came in clutch at the end and just did so much for us. And I can only ask for either that same type environment next year or better. And I just know it's going to be better even without asking, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And like, I'm blessed. I'm really blessed to have a winter ball that people come and their whole purpose and primary mission is to support an organization that is literally going to physically go in and protect children and build relationships and get proper education going.
Did you do an auction at that event by any chance?
Yeah, we did a live auction. I
Okay.
was the auctioneer, so I clearly had I've never done auctions before. I did my best, so but yeah, we did auctions. We had a beautiful painting of a pelican that was auctioned off. We had a gentleman by the name of David came in, and he's an illustrator for Star Wars, and I'm talking like OG 70s Star Wars.
Oh
He
wow.
painted a Darth Vader right there while everyone was there commingling and having charcuterie and eating food and all this good stuff. He was literally sitting there painting this, and at the end we auctioned it off and made a nice, good, pretty, penny to help the organization produce. And something like that is a one of one. And again, this is stuff that, like, it just came out of nowhere, and it's helped us significantly. And as you know, and I'm sure you do, and most of the viewers, a nonprofit organization is not easy, and we can turn $1 into a million. You know what I mean? And so that's what we're doing now is we're turning those bucks into millions, and then those millions go right into the school for the protections.
All right, one last question for you. What's your
Sure.
biggest challenge?
Um, I would say my biggest challenge is the uphill lack of progression, and the standards that are being set are not what they should be, and trying to explain what a new standard and a progressive standard would look like. And I think that's the difficult part. And the reason I say that is because there's a lot of money involved in this, right? There's a lot of money that's been involved in school security, so to speak, and it's kind of a new thing. And so breaking that mold, and helping people understand the value and the validation of what we are without them giving us a cold shoulder, or you know not giving us the second to even talk to them, is my biggest problem. We are not cold calling, we're not selling things, we're not doing any of that stuff. We literally have one mission, and people don't, just because the way the nation has been so long and how reactive it is, people just don't understand how to see through that yet, until we talk to them. When we talk to them and we get, like I said, see the white in their eyes, and they see mine, a lot
Right.
changes after that.
Well, good deal. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast. We're going to put all your information up so that people can contact you, or your website also, so they can learn more about what you're about, what Angel Force is about, and hopefully how they can either help support the foundation or even bring Angel Force into their school system. So,
Yeah, absolutely. If they would like to reach out, info@angelfp.com, right there on the wall. I am so grateful to be here, and I'm so thankful that you allowed me to do this with you.
well, I appreciate you taking the time, and we'll be in touch soon about some other things too as well. So, thank you
Awesome.
again. And
Thank
that
you.
concludes our episode of Lux Life Discovered. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you soon.